everyone, it's Max, and today I'm here with every book I've read in 2020 up until December. So I kind of realized, I was like, yes, I'm gonna film these two videos today, and then I was like, oh my gosh, one of them is literally not complete. I might just go over as well what I'm planning on finishing this month and give estimated ratings. I'll do that, but like, sorry, I just, I wanted to film a couple videos and I'm working with what I have. There are 232 books on this list, because that's how many books I've read so far. There's gonna be more because I'm going to give you estimated ratings of the books that I have not yet read but are on my December TBR. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy. This is probably gonna be long, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm not going to be holding up any of the books. I feel like that is just a lot of work. So I'm just going to talk about them, and I hope that's okay. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go month by month, tell you what they are and their rating. I'm not going to tell you what they're about or anything, because already I have a feeling this video is going to be quite long. But feel free to ask in the comments, like, if you are more interested in a book or you want to know more, and I'd be happy to tell you. It's just in this video, I think I'm just gonna go quickly through them. All right, so starting in January, the first book that I read was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book was Stormfront by Jim Butcher, which I believe I also gave a 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Prince Charming by Rachel Hawkins, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars, as well as Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins, which I also gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Alana, the First Adventurer by Tamora Pierce, which I, again, gave 5 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up Teen Human by Sarah Reese Brennan, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And I read The Wendy, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Dr. Obscene by Max Monroe, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Assassin's Guide to Love and Treason, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Catherine Parr by Elizabeth Norton, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Echo North, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White, which I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Paralandra, also by C.S. Lewis, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Fireborn by Rosaria Munda, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. A Winter's Promise, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. That Hideous Strength by C.S. Lewis, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. And then the final book I read in January is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And now going into February, the first book I read was In the Hand of the Goddess by Tamora Pierce, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up Full Moon by Jim Butcher, which I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Elfstones of Shannara by Terry Brooks, which I gave, again, a 4 out of 5 stars. The Forest Queen by Betsy Cromwell, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Jane Unlimited by Kristen Cashore, I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. 172 Hours on the Moon, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Supernova by Marissa Meyer, I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. And now into March, I read The Woman Who Rides Like a Man by Tamora Pierce, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Grave Peril by Jim Butcher, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The Wish Song of Shannara by Terry Brooks, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Part of Your World by Liz Braswell, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Liar Liar by Lisa Jackson, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. Crescent City, The House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Crown of Light, I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The Things We Cannot Say by Kelly Rimmer, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton, I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Those Across the River, I gave a 2.75 out of 5 stars. And then the last book I read in March was Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The first book I picked up in April was Summer Night by Jim Butcher, and I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Then I read the short story in the Shannara series called Indomitable, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up Invictus by Ryan Groden, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Lantern Man by John Bossoff, which I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer, I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The Storm of Life by Amy Rose Capetta, I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Lioness Rampant by Tamora Pierce, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Governess Game by Tessa Dare, I gave, again, a 5 out of 5 stars. Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell, I also gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, again, a 5 out of 5. 5 stars. Heart of Flames by Nikki Pau-Preto. You guessed it, a 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in April was The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which I, again, gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The end of April was really great rating-wise for me. And then the first book I finished in May was The Scions of Shannara, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Hot Dog Girl, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Spell on Wheels, which I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Mooncakes, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Edenbrook, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Lost City by Amanda Hocking, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Descender Volume 1, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Rolling in the Deep by Mira Grant, which I gave, again, a 5 out of 5 stars. Death Masks by Jim Butcher, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Umbral, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Lovely War by Julie Berry, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Storm Dancer by Jay Kristoff, which I gave a 1 out of 5 stars. Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Aurora Burning by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Elizabeth of York by Alison Weir, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Six Wives of Henry VIII by Alison Weir, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Haro, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Fate of the Fallen by Kel Cade, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. These Rebel Waves by Sarah Rash, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book I read in May was Book of a Thousand Days by Shannon Hale, which I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. My battery's flashing, so I'm going to have to charge it and then come back up and film the rest later, but I ended at a good place, and that was the end of May. Hi everyone. So, I'm trying to finish the rest of this video. My battery died, and then I wasn't able to get back here until Thursday, and I started filming this on Sunday. So I'm finally back. I tried to wear like the same outfit and everything, but if something looks slightly different, like makeup or behind me, that's why. But my dog peed on my bed this morning, so all of my sheets are in the wash, and that's why it's very, very white. So I do apologize for that. But without further ado, let's just keep going. All right, so into June, the first book that I read was Druid of Shannara by Terry Brooks, and this is where I decided to stop reading the Shannara novels, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Alice Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, which I also gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Hunting of the Snark by Lewis Carroll, which I gave like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Wolf Speaker by Tamora Pierce, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Blood Rights by Jim Butcher, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 1, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 2, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. In the Wake of the Gods, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 3, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Anna of Cleves by Alison Weir, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Fates of Ruin, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Edge Dancer by Brandon Sanderson, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 4, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Terraformer by Colleen Hoke, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Come Tumbling Down by Seanan McGuire, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Goldie Vance Volume 1, which I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 5, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Shadow in the Empire of Light, I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Skylark Song, which I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Paula Santiago and the River of Tears, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Shielded, which I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in June was Avatar: The Last Airbender graphic novel Volume 1, which I gave a 2.75 out of 5 stars. And now on to July. The first book that I read was Deadbeat by Jim Butcher, and this is where I decided to stop reading the Dresden Files by him, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Broken Wish by Julie C. Dow, which I gave a 2.75 out of 5 stars. Emperor Mage by Tamora Pierce, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. These Divided Shores by Sarah Rosh, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Catherine Howard by Alison Weir, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 6, which I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Wicked As You Wish by Rin Chapeko, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Miles Morales in the Spider-Verse universe, I don't even know what volume or like what series it was in, but I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 7, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and this is where I think I'm gonna start getting all the volumes mixed up for Lumberjanes, but around this point they did start to go downhill because this is where Noelle Stevenson stopped like writing them, and I noticed that they definitely took a turn for the worst. Loves Me, He Loves Me Not, which I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The Year Shakespeare Ruined My Life, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Skylark Sacrifice, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Goldie Vance Volume 2, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 8, which I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Name of All Things by Jen Lyons, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. True Life by Jay Kristoff, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The Morning Flower by Amanda Hocking, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 9, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Night of the Dragon by Julie Kagawa, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Beauty and the Beast, which I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Persuasion by Jane Austen, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Kingdom of Exiles by Maxime Martineau, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, which I have left unrated, but I do think it is a necessary read. Lumberjanes Volume 10, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Roommating, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Things I Cannot Say, which I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. In a Holidays by Christina Lauren, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 11, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. And I actually DNF'd it almost more than halfway through, and so I count it if I go past halfway, but that is just based on the first half. Holy Conspiracy, which I gave a 2.75 out of 5 stars. Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. And now going into August, which this is when you are able to see my vlogs, because I started doing BookTube in August. So if you are interested in my thoughts in any of these books that I now mention, go check out my vlogs or my wrap-ups. The Girl of Hawthorne and Glass, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Fable by Adrienne Young, which I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 12, which I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. The Lady Rogue by Jem Bennett, which I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Stolen Songbird by Danielle L. Jensen. This is another one that I DNF'd, and I would have given the part that I read about a 2.25 out of 5 stars. Lumberjanes Volume 13, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Rook by Daniel O'Malley, which I also gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Where Dreams Descend by Hanela Angeles, which I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Season of Storms by Andrei Sapkowski, which I gave a 2.75 out of 5 stars. Goldie Vance Volume 3, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. In the Realm of the Gods by Tamora Pierce, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Dear Ijeawele, A Feminist Manifesto by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars, maybe even a 1. The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Unbirthday by Liz Braswell, I also gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Memory of Souls by Jen Lyons, which again, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Midnight Circus by Jane Yolen, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. Queens of the Conquest by Alison Weir, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Orange Volume 1, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. 10 Rules for Faking It, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Loneliest Girl in the Universe, I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly, I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. My Calamity Jane by the Lady Janies, I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. All Out, which is a compilation of short stories, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Bet Me by Lila Monroe, I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Middle Game by Shannon McGuire, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Me and Mayfair by Tessa Dare, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Damned by Renee Audier, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Monstrous Volume 2, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The Book of Dragons, which is a compilation of short stories, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Duke of Christmas Present, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Seven Blades in Black by Sam Sykes, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And now into September, the first book that I read was The Lost Book of White by Cassandra Clare, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Mythopedia, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Blacksmith Queen by G.A. Aiken, another DNF, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. Queen of Volts by Amanda Foody, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Northern Wrath, which another another DNF, but I got halfway through and I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars. A House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Malerman, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. When the Earl Met His Match is another DNF that I had, and I would give it a 2 out of 5 stars. The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. First Test by Tamora Pierce, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And then I participated in a readathon, which meant I reread again Alice Through the Looking Glass and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which I both gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Aru Shah and the End of Time, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Train to Impossible Places, I also gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Lancaster and York by Alison Weir, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Aru Shah and the Song of Death by Roshni Chokshi, I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Down Comes the Night by Alison Shaft, I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. A Midsummer's Night Dream by William Shakespeare, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Night Tiger by Yingxi Chu, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. And now into October, I started with Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, which I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Old Vance Volume 4, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Any Rogue Will Do, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. A Golden Fury by Samantha Coho, I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Mary Boleyn by Alison Weir, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Page by Tamora Pierce, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Adventure Zone Volume 1, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Ice Dragon by George R.R. Martin, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Meet Cute Club by Jack Harbin, I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The Adventure Zone Volume 2, I also gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Sword in the Stars by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. The Tower of Fools by Andrzej Sapkowski, I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. The Adventure Zone Volume 3, I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. A Stitch in Time by Kelly Armstrong, I gave a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pau Preto, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in October was The Princess Will Save You by Sarah Henning, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Alright, and now into November, I started with The Camelot Betrayal by Kiersten White, which I gave a 2.75 out of 5 stars. Bookish and the Beast by Ashley Poston, I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Dryad Volume 1, I gave a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Over the Woodward Wall by Shauna Maguire, aka A. Deborah Barker, I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Squire by Tamora Pierce, I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars. The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in November was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And then into December, I have so far read 4 books that I can tell you about, and then I'm going to give you my hypothesis for the rest of them. And the first book that I finished in December was Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, which I absolutely gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I finished The Shadows of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Original by Brandon Sanderson, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I have finished so far is The Trials of Apollo, The Tower of Nero, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And now into my guesses for how the rest of the month is going to look. When I edit this, if I have finished more books, which I definitely should have, I will put across the screen my final rating for them. So far, right now, I am in the middle of Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, which I believe I will give a 5 out of 5 stars. Ever After by Amanda Hocking, I believe I will give a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Lady and Night by Tamora Pierce, I believe I'll give a 4 out of 5 stars. Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend, I believe I'll give a 5 out of 5 stars. We're at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir, because it's a reread, I know I will give a 5 out of 5 stars. Sky Before the Storm by Sabaa Tahir, I believe I will give a 5 out of 5 stars. 10 Arrows of Iron by Sam Sykes, I think and I hope will get a 5 out of 5 stars. Court of Swans, I believe will get a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien, I believe will probably get about a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!